Welcome back to Advantage Island, Survivor Indianapolis, Season 5, Episode 9. We're getting close to the end here. Only a few more of these left, so let's get into the episode. David Cole, Alex Golden here once again to break it down. So we have a big episode last week and fallout ramifications of this big vote coming in this week. We have a challenge throw? Question mark?
Yes, we do.
So, we have a really fun challenge with the sumo wrestling challenge. I thought it was really fun. What were your thoughts on this challenge here?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I actually got to test out this challenge when
Hmm.
we did it on our testing day, and I thought, I know I'm a big guy, right? Like I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm 6'2", 6'3", you know, right around 300 pounds. I'm not a small guy, but I don't know why I just felt like my leverage wouldn't be strong enough to get out someone that was kind of athletic, like a Keith, who's a little bit shorter than Chris, but kind of similar build, maybe more closer to Neil, but still, Keith's a very competitive person. When I did it against him. Uh,
Hmm.
I think he was afraid of me hurting him. So I was able to kind of get advantage and take leverage and do that. And I think you even did this challenge as well and beat Keith in our testing challenge. And so it was a lot of fun. And, just rub it in. Let's let Keith know that he lost twice because that was going to eat him alive. But
He lost to
uh,
an almost 300-pound guy and an almost 200-pound guy.
yeah. So, wimp, put some weight on. No, Keith is a very active person
He's way
and
more
he
active than
does,
we are.
and he's got, more age on us too. So we shouldn't be bragging too much about
Mhm.
this. But I was like, man, I was a little bit nervous, but you don't realize how little space you actually have in the restricted area. So you have to be very
Mm.
careful, and it can be difficult because if you step out, you're out. So that's a key thing there. And I got big feet. I'm a size 13 shoe, so I'm thinking, man, I got a lot of things going against me, but I was able to win. And so just kind of seeing how this challenge played out, Chris definitely through this challenge.
Hmm.
The girls did not. It was definitely a powerhouse there between the girls battling for immunity for the female individual immunity, and the male immunity was only Cameron versus Chris. And I have to ask you once again, how come you did this for individual immunity per gender instead of just one person? Did you just feel like it was not fair to have guys and girls going up against each other in this challenge?
Yeah, and maybe I could be wrong about that. We didn't really test that. Part of the other
No.
thing is like the only testing we could have really done is like me against Abby or Abby against Keith. Because
Yeah,
like imagine you against your wife. First of all, she yeah, she was
she was
pregnant,
pregnant. Yeah.
so that definitely wouldn't have worked. And my wife, like you would have thrown her to the wind. Like tossed her like sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
So like that's my thing is like it's hard to know. Like if you show me the lineup of girls from this season, I'm like Moretta could win it, Sonya could win it, maybe Leah could win it, but like some of the women came in more or less aggressive than I thought they would. Like Adrian didn't seem super aggressive. Leah was especially like she did not seem very aggressive in this challenge. Sonya and Moretta they both were like solidly aggressive, and
Hmm.
in their final matchup was really fun to watch. It was the best probably match of the entire thing because it wasn't a throw like the
Yeah.
guys, and then it was two people going pretty hard at each other. Um, it's funny if so like the testing that you talk about with you and Keith is what you see in the voiceover of like on this challenge. This is what's going to happen. This is the rules and whatever that you always do for the episodes. And when you see you and Keith lunges at you, and then you see Cameron and Chris, it is like night and day. So I don't know how you can see that and not think that Chris threw that challenge.
Yeah.
But I just thought, what, I just don't want there to be a situation where we get to a challenge and somebody feels like I have zero chance of winning this. And there are probably a couple of girls that still felt that way. Like it wouldn't shock me if Annie felt that way. She vocalizes that about I think about the axe throwing one. One of them she says, "I knew I had no chance to win this challenge," and that's fine. I can't make every challenge, especially with this more casual game where you have people playing that really aren't like super passionate about Survivor or about LRGs or about anything like this. So I can't make every challenge be just like super approachable, but I don't want anyone to feel like they got screwed over because they don't work out a bunch and they're not like as strong as some big dude. Because the other thing is you have no way of knowing who's going to be in the game,
Hmm.
right? Like it just
Yeah.
so happened that some of the smaller women got voted off earlier, and a lot of the big guys were still in the game.
Yeah, and I will say this, like maybe for a future season, we do this as a tribe challenge, and we
Oh
have guys
yeah, that'd
versus
be
guys,
so
girls
much
versus
fun.
girls, and so, like we see a lot of those kind of things on the actual Survivor show where they match up a male versus male versus male, female versus female, just because you want to make sure it's as fair as possible. So maybe we do that in a future season. You just never know. But hey, if you're listening to this, it's a good opportunity to see what happened and how you could win this challenge. But yeah, I mean, it was the right play. I think it was just at this point, getting two people safe, once again, it just makes it harder to vote somebody out now, right? You're just getting your options are limited once again based on gender, one, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and to me, early on, you feel like you bring up last episode, Drew, you have a good point. Chris, you're a threat. They're going to vote you out. And I was a little bit surprised when it originally happened that Chris threw the challenge to Cameron. I said, "What
Oh,
is
I
he
was
doing?"
shocked. I was
And
shocked.
he comes over and sits down. So this was not on the video. So I'm just going to give a little behind the scenes here for you guys from an editor standpoint, right? I'm actually sitting off to the side watching the challenge, and Chris, the guys are done, the girls are getting up ready for their challenge, their portion of the challenge, and Chris sits down next to me, and he just looks at me and goes, "I knew that if I won, they were going to vote Cameron out." And I'm like, "Okay, well," he's like, "I'd rather it be me than him." And so it's almost like he felt like sympathetic for Cameron, whereas previously when we had seen this relationship, Chris early on is constantly voting Cameron out, like trying to get Cameron out of the game. And so now it's like it's shifted a little bit. And then after the girls' challenge was over, and David says Moretto wins immunity, here comes Leah, Chris's wife. She walks up to him and she says, "Who you thinking?" And so then they kind of have a back and forth, and they threw out both Sonya and Annie as potential threats, or potential names they wanted to get rid of. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't see this happening right away because Chris just got back into the game and they had just gone to tribal council after he won the returning player challenge. They haven't had much time to strategize. They hadn't strategized at all together during the Chris before Chris got eliminated. So I was like, okay, what's happening here? And so you were kind of referencing maybe something that we heard on camera the previous episode in episode
Mhm.
8 that could have, foreshadowed an alliance forming before our eyes.
Yeah, so the dynamics in this group were pretty interesting, and it becomes a really difficult puzzle for us, the production, because we're pulling from a pool of people that all roughly know each other. So, if anyone's watching this that's not familiar with, you know, our casting has thus far been friends and family style LRG, meaning people that I know. And so there's a lot of people that don't know me very well that have played, but like not strangers, not people that I have no idea, not open
Mm,
casting, just whoever wants to come, come. We go out and recruit people based off of our friends and our connections. And so it's never been someone that I have no connection to whatsoever outside of like they want to play Survivor, a Survivor game. So because of that, there are oftentimes a lot of connections that we have to be very wary of, very careful, like marriages, and but there are other things too. And we see one pop up here today. So before we get into that connection,
sure.
really interesting that we had not seen Leah and Chris play together at all. The only other married couple in the game went at each other
Right.
immediately. Which I loved. Thought it was so fun, and like ended up being a great episode, and it was a really
Keneal.
pivotal, yeah, Keneal, very pivotal vote, um, and that was a lot of fun. And you do hear Chris say that, like, basically me and Leah have played games before, and she played us to win, and it might come back to bite me. We do hear him a couple different times being worried about a possible women's alliance. So Chris is coming back into the game with a much more strategic mindset, and although Drew's plea last week makes a lot of sense, Chris's point of view right now is I have the numbers with Shibwe. I have a Siakam in my wife who is going to be on my side. I hope could turn on me, but like I think wants to work with me. And then I have this even smaller alliance that you'll hear the name, and we did hear it mentioned last episode. We didn't talk about it much because we don't want to talk too much about things that have implications into the future. But you do see it pretty clearly here, and so there is this potential alliance they call Best Class. And so the background knowledge for those that don't know, Chris and Leah Henderson um, were class advisors for an Indiana Bible College class, maybe more than one, but this specific class included Moretta and Adrian as students. And so that's part of why, of the many other reasons why we separated different people based off different things, we separated Adrian and Moretta for that reason. There were like also Annie and Anna, who was the first person voted off. They were roommates, so we separated them. There's just a lot of connections that we're just trying to parse out. And the
Yeah.
fact that like even though we felt like it wasn't blood versus water where everyone had a partner, there were a lot of people that had connections, and yet those original tribes that we put in place seemed to weigh more a lot of times than these like prior connections.
Hmm.
Now, we'll see how moving forward these different alliances take shape, but that it is worth noting that there is this alliance of four people: Chris, Leah, Miranda, and Adrian, that is to Siakam, to Shibwe, that they're calling best class because that was like the moniker that they, I don't know if Chris or Leah came up with that for the class or if the class themselves came up with it, because Miranda and Adrian were a part of the class. Now, they weren't the only people, obviously, but they were a part of
Yeah.
the class. So
Yeah. It's
those
not
four people
CCS with two people.
with
Yeah.
like, yeah. So uh, some people will not, that'll go over some people's heads, but whatever.
Yes. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. I don't care. So that is an alliance that's formed. So if you're in Chris's shoes, you kind of see him as a bit of the driver of this vote.
Hmm.
He goes right to Sonya, tells Sonya, "Hey, I threw the challenge. I want to keep Shibwe together, and I wanted to just not put a target on Cameron. I wanted to help Cameron get through this round. So let's vote off a Siakam person." And you have Annie sitting here. So, I mean, you do hear last week and this week them talk about how Annie uh, shared that information. And what's so funny is that everyone was sharing every bit of information. But for whatever reason, this particular sharing of information really got in Chris's, like head, and he really was upset about it.
Hmm.
And that could have been enough to bury Annie. I don't know. It was a little bit of the wrong place, wrong time in terms of if you're Chris, you have this best class alliance of four that she's not a part of. She's not part of that class. Like she like worked with them last episode, but like in terms of like the origin of that name, best class, she was not in that class at Indiana Bible College, which is where that formed. Then you have the Shibwe Alliance, which she's not a part of Shibwe. So, and then you not only is she not a part of Shibwe, Chris has vocalized fear that maybe Leah could turn on him at some point with the women, of which Annie is a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, it made a
So
lot of sense. It made a
makes a
lot
lot
of
of sense
sense for him
for
to do that.
Chris.
And you're referencing when they both won,
Yeah,
Chris won the axe throwing competition, and so they chose to go to Advantage Island, and then they picked Annie to go. And Annie is like telling Chris all these details about what's going on. Like she's just laying it all out there. She's just an open book,
yeah,
and she was just an open book the entirety of the game. And that was the problem with her because her and Chris both find out there's an advantage. And it was before the pavers challenge. And before Chris even gets a chance to go up there and get the advantage, Leah gets it because Annie told her where it was at. And Leah's just smart and she realized, oh, Annie just flipped this over to get hers. I wonder if there's one under
mhm.
this cone. So she flips it over and voila, there it is. So, and she kind of already had an idea before the challenge started. So I'm pretty sure Annie told her.
And he
So
did tell her.
yeah. So, and that's what happens. Loose lips sink ships, and that's what happened
Mhm.
with Annie. She gets her boat sunk tonight like Battleship, and she's out of the game because she talked too much and she was not really a big threat to win the game, I don't think, at this point in Chris's eyes, but maybe a threat to him winning the game. So it was a smart move by him, and I thought of the moment, like, what are you doing, bro? You're gonna get voted out now. You just threw this challenge to save Cameron because you want to be done. Like, I thought he was just done playing for the day because some people get like that. They just want to be
Yeah,
done, voted out. He had made comments about going to sleep in his hammock and things like that. But then, of
yeah,
course, I didn't hear the confessional during the day where he talked about like this is my plan all along. I'm going to come back in and win this thing. So
yeah,
super competitive. And then when Leah came up and him and Leah and it was quick and it was discreet. It wasn't like this long drawn out, hey, what are we doing? Blah, blah, let's talk for 5-10 minutes. It was like she walked up to him. She was like, what are you thinking? He was like, Annie or Sonya? She was like, Annie. And she's like, okay. And she walked away. And I mean, that was it. That was their
mhm,
conversation. That wasn't caught on tape. You give some more detail there. But We talk about best class with Adrian, Moretta, and Leah and Chris. Yet when you get to the vote, Adrian did not vote with the best class. So
Hmm.
while it seems like it might have been something that happened and went into play, is it going to be what happens for the future? We don't know because Adrian's still kind of waffling on what decision she wants to do. And she voted Annie. She was on the wrong side of the vote tonight. So now is her back up against the wall. She's going to try to climb back into the best class alliance and see how far she can ride that coattail, or is she going to maybe try to figure out another way to get back into the game? I don't know, but it just when you throw an extra vote out there randomly and you're on the wrong side of the vote, it can be kind of worrisome, especially if people realize, oh, you were coming for one of our Sheboy people, so now we got to get you out.
Yeah, and especially now there's only 6 people left in the game. So it's not like it's like you can't just be like, oh, that wasn't me, that was so and so. Because everyone else in the game is Shibwe. So it like makes sense that it would be either you or Leah. And
Mm-hmm.
just unfortunately for Adrian, because of the fact that Leah's Chris's wife, uh I think he can probably assume it's gonna be you that voted for Sonya, not Leah. Or he could like talk to Leah and figure out for sure what she did just by reading her, whether or not she tells the truth. Yeah. So for Annie, I think it was like you said, a lot of that was her fault for sharing the I don't the advantage information that made upset Chris there a little bit. But also, it's just like you unfortunately did not have a strong alliance, and I don't think she really fully realized. I think she thought she was in with that best class group more than she actually was.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not confirmed that with her, but last episode she goes right up to them and she like talks about it. Chris says she's trying to hop on a train and something makes a joke like that. And he plays it off like a joke, but you can tell he's not joking. Like
Yeah.
he's like, "No, you're not in this alliance. This is the four of us." And so I think she takes it as a joke, but like really is not. And so I think that she thinks, yeah, I'm with them, that we have five. And so knowing where you stand is like super important. And, at some point she lost the numbers and it's hard to go back and say like what she could have done differently. There's a lot of different possible avenues. Because once you go back, it's like there's just a million different options.
Mm-hmm.
Where like, if Neil is still in the game, she vocalized some frustration over last episode on that moment where Chris is saying she's trying to hop on this train. He like says, "Oh, she's the one that gave away all the information," and she says, "I had to." That was like kind of like Neil's whole thing was like, "Everyone, we're all together. We're all on this for the team." Even though, and she was like, she could you tell she was frustrated because she realized, unlike Neil, that you're gonna have an individual part of this game coming up in just a few hours, and you cannot just bleed and die for the team if you want to win.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she was frustrated by that. So I don't know that she would have wanted to work with Neil and the rest of Siakam long term. So it's like I don't think she really knew where she stood, which is a problem. But also I don't know like who is she supposed to work with now that the numbers are down so far, and there's only three Siakam left, two of which are in an alliance of four that you're not a part of, and then the Shewade people outnumber you 4-3. It's like
Yeah.
okay, it's like where are you gonna go?
Yeah. Part of my cringiness here, but it felt like she was Siakam girlies till she got voted out. And
She
it
was, I
just
think.
and it seems like she wasn't really working with the guys whatsoever. She tried to kind of like pull Drew in on like the blind side, like, oh, me and Adrian are gonna mastermind Drew and make him think
Yeah,
we're not whatever, and that didn't really work out. I mean, she's lucky she wasn't the one that got voted out
yeah,
in that round compared to Adrian. But to me, she was just basically, hey, it's the girls from Siakam, and that's who I'm aligning myself with the entirety of the game, ride or die. And she eventually died on that train. So, and Leah, very smart, strategic player in this game, knew when it was time to jump ship. She rode the train as long as she could, and then she said, I got to jump ship. Adrian, at this point, she's been on the other train with Annie maybe a little bit too long, but we'll see if she can jump over for the next episode and catch the next ride to hop on that best class train if we're going to keep it along with the analogy here. But I
yeah,
just, I just feel like Annie's game was pretty cut and dry. It was, I'm going
yeah.
to do this and whatever happens, happens. And so I don't really think she understood the entirety of the strategic part of the game. And She got as far, honestly, she got probably as far as she should have gotten. And
Probably.
I think this was the right move at the right time for everybody in the game to get rid of her because, maybe you could say if you're Leah, you push back and say, no, let's vote Sonya because you want to have that other Siakam girl with you. But at the same time, you were outnumbered 4-3, and Chris wasn't really budging, and Chris knew that he had Moretta, Sonya, and Cameron with him, so she was outnumbered. So at
Hmm.
that point, it was just unfortunate
Yeah.
for Annie, and Leah kind of knew, okay, my back's against the wall a little bit here. I can work better with Adrian and than I can Annie. Adrian's more of a gamer, and she's shown that throughout this game and little spurts where Annie has just been so, blindly loyal to Red Siakam and the girls that, yeah, at the end of the day, it just ended up, being the reason why she made it this far and didn't get any further. But I still, for the most part, I like that Annie told Leah about the advantage when she got back from her vantage point. Like, that's smart. Who would have thought that she'd be going up head to head against her in that first
Yeah.
paper challenge?
It
That's luck
was
of the draw.
They drew rocks for that is
Yeah.
the other thing too.
Yeah.
So like if Leah had not drawn the rock to go to so that's a little behind the scenes that we didn't actually get into before. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Also, I wouldn't have even remembered to go back to
Mhm.
that. So part of why Leah had the advantage at all was that they drew rocks, and I was gonna have Annie go with whoever she got paired with, and then I was gonna have Chris go next with whoever he got paired with, and I would have Annie go to the right or left, whatever, and then Chris would go to the other side. So then only the people that knew about the advantages would have first dibs in theory. We should not have done a guy versus guy, girl versus girl challenge with that hidden idol. It was a little bit of bad planning. We had to change some things the day or the week of, based off of going from 16 to 14 players, and this was a new twist that we just did not. I don't think we tried to think through all the possibilities, but there are a couple things that we just didn't think out, such as giving Eli and Cameron the information for that hidden advantage, and then doing a swap the same round. So
Mhm.
then they didn't have the opportunity to both get those advantages. So, and they had the information about them, and they could use that information to their advantage, but then they could not. So it just didn't exactly work out. And then the rocks just happened to favor Leah. And I would assume that Annie told pretty much the whole tribe, or at least maybe told Annie and Adrian, like told the Siakam girls. I don't know, but I think your point overall about Annie is fair. Um, and what my curiosity is, like, they had such a coalescence around voting off Chris just a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and now they have a clear shot with most of the same people that voted Chris out, and they're like, no, no, we're good. We're gonna vote off Annie instead.
Yeah.
And
If there was one person from Sheboy that you think they could have pulled the flip on Chris, who do you think it would have been? Do you think there was anybody?
no, the
See,
problem is
that's
the
crazy to
problem.
me. I would have probably flipped on Chris if I were one of the Sheboy
Yes,
members,
yeah, I would too.
just because he was.
Sonya was a very very loyal, right? So
Yeah.
Sonya is no, not gonna. She had always played that way. She'd been played pretty loyal to Chris, Cameron, whoever, Mason, everybody. And then the other two were Moretta. And the problem was Moretta, those Siakam girls made it very clear that if she hadn't won immunity, she'd be gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and Drew was a part of that group telling her that, but it wasn't just Drew that said that. So
Yeah.
that made it pretty clear. Okay, so I can't totally trust Annie and Leah and Adrian are a part of this best class thing that I'm a part of, but like they did tell me they were going to vote me off if I hadn't won that challenge. So I feel safer than going with Chris in my Sheboy alliance that has worked with me in the past. So then the only person left is Cameron.
Hmm.
And although Chris has voted for Cameron multiple times, Chris just saved Cameron
Yeah.
potentially by giving him an advantage by
Yeah.
throwing the challenge, right? And so if you're Cameron, you're like, well, what's going on now? He wants to work with me. Now he seemed to be good to go. And I understand if you're Cameron, you're thinking like, okay, we take Sheboy to Final Four, and then I vote off Chris at Final Four, like, or I vote Chris at five and vote off whoever's left from Siakam. If you're
Hmm.
if you're Cameron, you're thinking like maybe Chris loses at six, and then because then you think it's 4-2 if you vote Annie out. Shibwe over Siakam. And then if Chris loses at 6, you vote off Chris. And then
Hmm.
it's 3-2, and you still have your advantage 3-2 over the last two Siakam people. Or if Chris wins at 6 and loses at 5, you vote him off there. Or loses at 4, you vote him off. So like if you're Cameron, you're thinking, oh, I've got 3 more challenges. Like surely you won't win all 3 of them. Okay, fine. Let's keep him around
Yeah.
just to keep our majority and not have to go to a 3-3. Because that's another thing is like
Well,
I
let me
don't think
throw this
that
in here real quick. Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off,
no,
but
you're good.
we didn't mention it last episode, but because Moretta did correctly guess one person to get the advantage to come back into the
She
game, she
has that
does
as
have a
still a
steal a
vote.
vote. So if she sees Chris as this threat to her winning the game, she can
Yeah,
vote Chris off, align with the Siakam girls. Boom, next challenge, she can steal one of those Siakam girls' votes, take the other Sheboy with her, Sonya and Cameron, and
yeah,
now she's got a 4-2 advantage herself. So that would have been a more of a power move too to kind of show how much of it in the game she's in control of it. So or
yeah.
how in control she is of the game. So that to me could have been a bigger move by her, but I mean she didn't need to do it, right? Because
No.
it wasn't necessary. But like if she felt, which it still could happen, right? We haven't seen the next
Yeah,
episode
there's
or
still
what's
a
going to
few more
happen at the end.
weeks.
Like Chris could end up just going on a run here, and I
Yeah,
kind of feel like for Moretta, she's got the individual immunity necklace from this challenge. Like she's proven that she can win challenges. This is her second immunity win. So maybe if she feels like Chris moving forward is her biggest threat, why not get him out here? That's the only thing I was going to
yeah.
say because I think that could have been interesting to me.
I just think for her, you're making a big flashy move in a game where they've been voting off people who make big flashy moves.
And that's not
You
her MO
also
either.
It's not her MO. It's also giving her a lot of strategic credit that she hasn't shown to have had yet. And that's not, I'm not trying to be like some kind of, judgmental
Yeah.
about that, but like we've been saying, overall, this cast, and all of our casts, they play more like a pretty straightforward, standard early season of Survivor type game. And so that's the next level of strategy that I don't know that she would have thought through of like it did feel like a lot of times they were playing it 1 or 2 rounds at a time and not
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 rounds ahead. Some people definitely were playing, further ahead, but not everybody. You talked about how Annie was playing pretty straightforward, loyal. I think Adrian is playing pretty straightforward, loyal as well. I think Leah was playing pretty straightforward, loyal, was a little bit more flexible, and part of that was because she had Chris in the game that gave her some options. Without Chris being in the game, who knows if that would have been, as true.
Mhm.
So it's just like you're taking a big gamble on the fact that number one, can you get the numbers around Chris? Like, do you know, is Leah going to want to vote Chris off again? I don't know for a fact if because she voted for Chris when he got voted off the first time. Was
Yeah.
that just her trying to be in the numbers, or did she actually want him out of the game?
Mm.
And that they haven't really talked about that in the show so far. So we don't know exactly where she stands. So if you're Moretta, do you want to go up to someone's wife and say, "Hey, do you want to vote your husband out?"
Yeah, it's a little
you know, and so you have that, and then you have Adrian and Annie. So if you're wanting to vote Chris off here, if you're Moretta or if you're anybody, you got to have, either players still vote now to do it, or you have to get 4 people, and 3 other people other than yourself. And, you know, Annie felt good with the Siakam girls, and so did Adrian, and they thought they had Chris. And so, and then you had the best class thing with Moretta. So who does like, it's
yeah.
like trying to figure out the different. That was this that that's where it got super complicated here. Is that you have old Sheboy, old Siakam, right? And those are both groups that work together, that do work together, have worked together. Then you have this new best class thing that at least for this episode and last episode work together to some extent. I mean,
Mhm.
last episode it was like pretty much everybody voted for Drew, so whatever. And then you have the potential of all girls because Sonya worked with the girls to vote Chris off and to vote Eli off. So it's like kind of complicated in terms of who can you trust to work with you to vote somebody off that won't go and then tell that person because they potentially don't have see a reason to work with them. I just think Chris is doing a way better job now than he was before
For sure.
because he was. Here's the thing, and he's said this pretty clear, but it's also you'll hear him in his. I have an interview with him coming after the end of the season, and he said I thought I would be too big of a threat if I came out of the gate being strategic, so I tried to not be strategic and try to just do my own thing. But the thing is, the way that backfired on him is that then people could not rely on him as an ally, and people still saw him as a threat because he's just too charismatic and he's good at challenges. So now what's happening is people are seeing him as an asset and as a like as a person they can work with to build their own game up. And I think people just are going to assume they can get him out later.
Yeah.
Um, or so that's my assumption for a lot of people.
Hmm.
We'll have to wait and see. But I just think that like they're underestimating how much time they have left and how many challenges it could take to get to the end. Because it's only three more challenges.
Right, right. And that's a big thing. I think for this vote, when I look at what Adrian did from her perspective,
Sure.
she was being Siakam strong still. She was being Siakam girl strong with Annie. I don't
Yeah.
know if she knew Leah was going to flip. I don't know if Leah told her she was.
Yeah.
It seems to me like she thought Leah was on board with her and they were maybe going to try to pull Moretta or somebody like that to vote somebody else out, maybe
Or
Sonya.
Chris. Maybe
Yeah,
Chris would be with him. I think
yeah,
she thought she
so
had Chris.
yeah. Which is interesting because was Moretta a part of that? Was the best class all in alignment here? So it's kind of like the best class aligned together to vote out Annie and didn't get the
But
message
but but
relayed.
Adrian didn't. So
That's what I'm saying. It's like
yeah,
unless Adrian knew and just didn't want to put a vote
on an
on
ally.
Annie
Hmm.
and maybe was trying to do that for a jury vote later down the road. I mean, that's a smart strategic plan if you promise somebody you
Yeah.
wouldn't write their name down or something like that. I don't know if she did that or not, but
Yeah.
they were obviously working together for the majority of the game when they were there together. So
The entire game. Yeah.
yeah, that to me probably just it probably was awkward for her to write her name down just because she's like I've been working with her so much, and Sonya hasn't done anything for me. I don't really see how Sonya helps Annie or excuse me Adrian moving forward. So smart to kind of just like yeah let's get rid of her. So and you just saw how competitive she was in that last challenge where she almost beat Moretta,
Really
and
close. Yeah.
she's been pretty good in challenges throughout the entirety of the season. So
Hmm.
honestly, like I said earlier, it was the right vote at the right time. I think Annie writing was on the wall. She wasn't going to win this game the way she was playing it unless she had some miraculous turnaround, which I didn't really see happening. She did have a nice advantage play with the steal a vote on Eli after he played a steal a vote. Good move by her to stay true to her alliance, but overall, I just at this point in the game, it was the right move for Chris to get his
Definitely for
original,
Chris.
yeah, old Sheboy together, and I think Chris is looking pretty good moving forward. I feel really strong about the alliances that he's kind of built with his original Sheboy plus best class, plus not having a lot of individual competition in terms of stealing immunity wins from him. I think he could go on a run here and maybe win this whole thing out to the final three.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. Before we head out though, one of my favorite moments of the entire
Hmm.
season, the thumbnail. It was worth being the thumbnail to spoil the challenge winner if anyone saw that. Don't care. Uh, Annie laying in pure exhaustion on the ground, just totally prone on the ground while they're plotting against her. And Merida says, Annie's sneaky, Annie's sneaky, while Annie is doing one of the least sneaky things humanly possible, laying laying prone on the ground. And I
Just
just thought like
flat as all
Eh,
get out.
yeah, like that was just an amazing moment. Like if you said, David, make a compilation of like 10 minutes of the best footage you've had over the last 5 years,
Uh,
that is definitely making it in. Like
yeah,
if it had to do a 3 minute compilation, that's making it in. So
this picture says it tells so many stories because you've got
yeah.
Cameron just sitting there like in the distance. He's close to Adrian, but not like too far. But it's almost like he's babysitting those two, almost like watching to see what they say, and the other three
Hmm.
are like game planning. And it's like if I'm Adrian and I'm Annie and I see Leah over there talking to two other people that could
Hmm.
potentially vote me out, I'd be over there like, hey, what's the plan? I wouldn't want them by themselves strategizing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yet here
Yeah.
they are. I mean, Annie, this photo, this is like hilarious. It looks like she is dead, like literally dead.
Yeah. Other than her legs being crossed, that's
Are her legs crossed?
I believe
Okay,
I believe
her
actually
feet look
actually
crossed.
I don't think they are. I think yeah, they are crossed. Her legs are crossed. If you look at her where her leggings cut off, they are crossed.
Okay,
Um, I wasn't sure at first, but I think I'm
yeah.
pretty sure
If you zoom in, you can see, but from a distance, you can't really tell.
you can't really tell. Either way, it's a fantastic.
Oh
It's the
man,
it's the
thank
thumbnail
you,
of the
Annie.
year. Thumbnail of the year. Great
She was
moment.
my winner pick, I think.
Oh really? I don't remember.
My
It's been so long
preseason
now.
winner pick. I thought that she could be under the radar, sneaky good, which she kind of was for a little bit. Like she made
Hmm.
it pretty decently far, but you know, like I said already, I've laid out why she lost. I don't need
Yeah.
to go through this. This is why Blank lost, why Annie lost. You got my little 3 minute soliloquy there of why she lost, so I don't need to say anything else. Did I use
Yeah.
soliloquy there right? Probably not.
Yeah. I think so.
I'm not trying to be too smart here, but you know, when I know big words, I try to apply them when they're necessary.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So let's get out of here. Look forward to episode 10. We only have
Wow.
12 episodes, so 3 more weeks of Advantage Island episodes, recaps, and then after that, look forward to some interviews with the players. Not everybody, but I think it's probably around half the cast.
Cool.
I've recorded with 6 different people, I think, at this point, and I have one more, so that's 7. Yeah, so I have 7 scheduled or
Wow.
already recorded. So it may end at 7, but I've sent messages out, and I'm not going to pester people. So if people don't want to do it, that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
I've
Good stuff
recorded.
though. That's
I
great work
recorded.
by you.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I recorded 6. They're pretty interesting. Eli's and all really good. Honestly, I won't start naming them, but like all very interesting stuff. Overall. So yeah, I should have at least 7. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, make sure you guys are on the lookout for those. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Survivor
Please,
Indianapolis, right?
yes, please subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah. And then if you are watching this and you're still here at this point and you would like to play Survivor, email David
Yes,
at survivorindianapolis at
at
gmail.com.
gmail.com.
It
Yeah,
is on
why
the end
not?
of all of our episodes when the vote out is
Oh yeah, it
person
is.
being voted out is, you know, explaining why they got voted out of the game. So you can see what the email address is there. But please do us a favor. Let us know if you would like to play. I know David mentioned last episode that there might be a charge for the upcoming season, but that just means that maybe you get to take something home with you. You never know. Maybe a souvenir, something like that. It's just, we're going to make Survivor Indianapolis happen. It's going to get better and better every year. So
Let's do it.
play. Apply. Be on Survivor Indianapolis. All right.
All right, let's get out of here.